Hello, everyone, and welcome to another technical live stream here at the Wized channel. And Silsa is already ready for payments. Yes, today we are going all into payments. So, if you've been following this series, today it's actually the 10th video of this series, which means that you've been watching me for more than 10 hours build things. So, if you haven't made it up until now, I really appreciate you spending the time and learning and sharing this with me. But yeah, we are celebrating this number 10th session by introducing one of the things that I think that most people will find helpful, which is memberships in a SaaS application or in a web application. In this case, we are building a community forum using Webflow, Wized, and Supabase. And right now we've built mostly everything. It's just a few details missing. But now the next step to go is towards implementing premium memberships. We want users to be able to get a subscription, pay for it, and then get access to specific gated sections of our forum. So we need to introduce Stripe into the mix. We're going to be using Stripe for payments. So we want to connect everything on from the moment that the user signs up to the moment that the user wants to pay for a subscription. We need to create that checkout. We need to handle when the user pays for the subscription. We need to update the user role in the forum so we consider it a premium user, and we need to change the logic of the forum so premium users can do different things than normal users. So we've got a bunch of things to do here, and I'm very excited. Now, I gotta tell you, we're gonna be doing things from scratch. I'm doing everything from scratch in this series. And today we're gonna be getting a bit into coding because to implement some of the Stripe features that we wanna do, we will have to use Supabase Edge functions. And Supabase Edge functions, it's not a no-code thing. We have to write the code. We're gonna be using AI, don't worry, we can ask for things. But just be mindful. We're gonna be doing a bit of coding in this session, and things might not work as expected on the first try. So you might see me just debugging shit until it works. Hopefully not for a long time, but we'll see. So let's go and just do a quick walkthrough of what's been done so far. On the last session, we worked on the activity section of the forum, where I essentially, as a user, I can see all my activity in the forum. I can see the posts that I have created. I can see the posts that I have liked. I can see the posts that I read in the past, like that. So if I open another post and I go back to the read post, now I'm going to see that that post is the last one that I read. And then ideally, we would also have these two sections implemented, my comments and liked comments. But in the previous live stream, we did not have enough time to implement this. I want to still do it, but I'm not going to be doing it today, right? Because the process is mostly the same as this, but instead of doing it for posts, it's just using a different table, the table from comments, right? So the process is still the same. Just if you want to do something similar, just use the same work that we did on the previous live stream as the reference. When we finish in implementing memberships and wrapping up the forum, we might spend some time tweaking things that are missing, like small little details or missing functionalities like this one, right? But today I am going to be skipping it because I want to focus again on memberships, right? So what do we need to do to make a membership system fully working here on our community forum? Let's go to the drawing board because we're going to draw a bunch of things. So far, right now, we've been using just Supabase, right? So obviously for the UI and for the front-end logic and interactivity, we've been using Webflow and Wized. That's all good. But strictly talking about databases, we've been dealing just with Supabase, right? And in Supabase, we've got a bunch of things stored, like, let's make this a bit bigger. Yeah. We've got a bunch of things stored in Supabase, like the posts and the comments and blah, 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 blah. What we are interested specifically, it's in the users table. because in this table it's where we store essentially the login credentials of the users, but also the information from the users, like their role or their metadata, like the username, all these things, right? So if we want to implement something gated, something premium, we need a way from the front end here on a web application to distinguish users. When we load the user, so when we come here and we get the user, we get a bunch of data from that user, right? We are getting, if the user is authenticated, we're getting the email of the user, blah, 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 blah. We also may want to get additional things like, for example, the role of the user. Maybe the user is a premium user, right? So let's imagine that in here, additionally, we receive an extra field that says that the user is premium, right? And for that moment, we'd be able to just add some logic here in Wized that determines if the user is trying to open a category and that category is specifically for premium users. We always first check if the user is premium, and if the user is not premium, then we simply redirect the user. Maybe we prompt the user to pay for a subscription, etc. Right? We can do all kinds of logic here on the front end once we receive the important data, what we really care about, which is if the user is premium or not, right? But how do we get to the point where we can know if the user is premium or not? We need to set up a bunch of things, right? So that's why we're introducing Stripe in the mix. In Stripe, we are not going to be talking about users. We're going to be talking about customers. In Stripe, every single, let's call it every single user that you have in Stripe, it's called a customer. And for those customers in Stripe, we can do a bunch of things. We can create checkouts where the user simply sees a Stripe hosted page and they can go ahead and add their payment details. They can subscribe to something. They can do one-time payments. They can do all sorts of things, right? In Stripe, there's a billing portal where the users can go ahead and manage their subscriptions. So if I have a subscription and I want to cancel the subscription, upgrade the subscription, downgrade the subscription, we can either do it everything from scratch. That's also a possibility. But Stripe offers what's called a billing portal where the users can do everything there. In Stripe, we only need to care about sending the user to that billing portal, not sending the user, sending the customer there, right? And then with Stripe as well, we get also things like, for example, webhooks that notify us whenever a customer makes a payment. So the flow is going to be the following. Remember here in Supabase, we've got databases with things. And in Stripe, we've got all these different things being handled. So the flow will be this one. The user wants to pay. Let's call this. The user wants to subscribe. To subscription. Subscribe. And that means that we are going to send him, we send the user to a Stripe checkout. But before doing that, we need to do another thing, and it's that we make sure that Stripe has a customer that it's the matching thing from Supabase, right? So we ensure that the user has a customer profile in Stripe, like that. Because in Stripe, we cannot use the same users from Supabase. As mentioned, Stripe has its own customers database thing. So anytime that we want to do something with Stripe with a Supabase user, we need to ensure that first that user has a profile in Stripe with his data. So once we have ensured that the user has a profile in Stripe, then we can send the user to a Stripe checkout, like that. And when the user has paid, Stripe will send a webhook. And that webhook So let's call this Stripe sends a webhook. That webhook notifies us that says, hey, somebody paid something. We need to listen for that webhook, listen for webhooks, and update the Supabase users database like that. All right. And essentially, what's going to happen is that if the user pays, Supabase will send us a webhook, and in that webhook, we will know, all right, this user who has a customer profile in Stripe has paid for this subscription. So let's go ahead and update this user's table in Supabase to reflect that status. So maybe it's a premium subscription, maybe it's just a free trial, like it could be anything, right? And the same thing happens if the user unsubscribes in the future. If the user unsubscribes, um, so user unsubscribes, same thing, Stripe will send a webhook, and we can handle the same logic. All right, this user has been unsubscribed, that subscription has been canceled, so let's go ahead and update the users table in Supabase so we can reflect it. So at all times, the main source of truth for the subscriptions being active or not active, it's always going to be Stripe. And then Stripe will be back and forth notifying Supabase to make sure that that same data that it's mainly that the main source of truth it's in Stripe, it's also represented in Supabase. So then from the front end, from our web application, we don't need to care about Stripe. We only need to care about Supabase. What's coming in Supabase, we can trust it because it's always going to be in sync with Stripe. Does that make sense? If you have any questions, let me know because we're getting into a bit more complexity than what we've been doing so far. And this usually it's a very crucial implementation because we're talking about money here. We're talking about getting payments from our users to make our application sustainable. So we want to do things right. So that's the process. All right. Now let's go ahead and inspect one of the things that we will need in this project, which is using edge functions, right? Um, Everything that I've mentioned here related to um, opening a Stripe checkout, creating a customer profile in Stripe, and listening for Stripe webhooks, all these things have to happen in a server, right? That could be any server. It could be a server of your own. It could be a Node.js server that you have created somewhere. It could be a Cloudflare worker. It could be an AWS edge function. It could be anywhere, right? Or it could be also in Supabase edge functions. And because this live stream series talks about building something with Supabase, we're going to be using this. We're going to be using edge functions, which is it's just a fancy way of saying that it's serverless functions that are running closer to the user. But it's still a server, right? So in these edge functions, we're going to need three edge functions. We'll see. So we will need one edge function to um, we need to decide if we want to automatically create a Stripe profile for each user when the user signs up, or if we want to create the Stripe profile only when the user attempts to create to pay. And I think that that's a good approach. We're going to do that. So we're going to need an edge function to create the customer profile and the Stripe checkout. That's one. We're going to need another one to listen for webhooks and update Supabase. And we might need a third one, but for now, I think that it's fine. I think that with two up, yeah, absolutely. I think that we can start with these ones, right? Now, obviously, we're going to need some UI as well. So we're going to have to update webflows so we can display some button like, hey, go ahead and pay for something, etc. But we can handle the UI later. Let's focus on just the server logic. So um, to spin up new Edge functions, we can do it directly from here. Up until like a month ago, we needed to do it via CLI locally. So we needed to write things locally. But the cool thing is that now Supabase has a online editor. So now we can do everything here without leaving Supabase. Very convenient. And also we've got the chat, which is also cool because we can ask the chat to do things and we don't need to be coding everything from scratch, right? But as you can see here, this is how a very basic Supabase function looks like. Let's try to deploy this. Let's call this function name. Let's call this open checkout. Open, or let's do Stripe open. Well, open Stripe checkout, like that. For now, it's not doing anything intended, but at least we've got this, right? And if we wanted to call this from Wized, it's as simple as going ahead here. We're going to have an error now. Don't worry. But it's as easy as creating a new request. Let's call this open checkout. Well, let's do the same thing. Open Stripe checkout. And this is going to be a Supabase invoke function method where we call the same function name because we named it this way here. It's open Stripe checkout. And for now, that's it. We don't need any HTTP method. I think that by default, it's going to default to get. But we're going to run into an issue now. We're going to have a server error here. And that is going to happen because we will run into CORS issues. Look at that. We are running, whoops, why undefined? No, not undefined, please. But still, when trying to fetch this Supabase Edge function, we are running into CORS issues because we are executing this from the front end. And when you call a server from the front end, there is a thing called CORS, which is a pain in the ass, and we need to deal with it. We need to add specific headers in the request to make the response be successful. Sorry, we need to add specific headers in the response of the server to make the browser trusted and allow us to use it. And to do this, let's go ahead back to the code here. We could simply do Supabase Edge functions CORS because they have a dedicated thing here. We can simply copy this, or we can even ask AI as well. But let's copy this because we know it from here. So let's use these CORS headers. Yeah, let's add this for a second. Yeah. Boom, CORS headers. And what it says is, all right, if the request method is options, we need to return those CORS headers. So let's do that here. Boom, like that. And then anytime that we respond something, doesn't matter when, but if we respond something, the headers need to include as well these CORS headers. So we want to do that. I don't know if this has some headers in it. Yes, it does. So we want to include here the CORS headers as well. That's it. So if we deploy this and we did it right, I think that we did it right. Let's get rid of that console log. I think that now we should be able to call this without having issues. Let's see. All right, we're still having some issues, but we will fix them and then we'll start into building the logic. All right, access to fetch this from has been blocked by CORS policy. All right, so we're still getting these. Let's see. Open Stripe checkout. All right, we've got this here. Let's see. The response, are they coming with the request, with the, no, they are not. All right, and is, Let me 1 second. Let's call this again. All right. Let's see. Is this deployed? Open Stripe checkout. The course headers. Yes. And then here, and we're responding it with a no response. This overview. Let's see the invocations. Okay. I see that the options are being successful. That's good. Because the options request is when we are exchanging with the browser to determine the course headers. But here, this is failing, and this might be failing for something different. Let's see. Execute in time, to the test, chat checkout. All of this is coming fine. All of this is coming fine. Internal server error. Let's see, response header, set cookie. All right, time to log things. I really hate when this happens. Come on, we just did it very basic. Very basic. Oh, hold on. I know what's happening. Because we are expecting some data here because we're passing a post request and doing this. All right. Because what's happening is that the request is expecting it to be a post request with a body of a name and the name having something like my name, like that. So if we do this now, we should get a hello, Alex. All right, fixed. Cool. Okay, so we've got the edge function running properly without course issues. That is good. Now, in here, we don't want to have this logic. We want to have logic for make sure, let's add a bunch of steps here. First of all, make sure that the user has a Stripe customer profile. Second, we want to open the Stripe checkout. And third, send back the URL so the user can go to the checkout. Right? That's going to be opening the Stripe checkout. So here we need a bunch of things. First of all, we need to set up Stripe so we can create a customer profile from here, right? So we're gonna need, I've already went ahead and created a test sandbox in Stripe. If you're building this, you will have to go in Stripe, sign up, create a new account. They will probably ask you questions about your business, things like that. And then you can set up a sandbox to test things, right? So in my sandbox, we've got some API keys, and that's exactly what I need. I'm going to show you those API keys. You can hack me if you want. This is a test account. You're not going to get any money from here. So we want to use the Stripe secret key. So then with the Stripe API, we can create the customer profiles. Right? So here, let's do Stripe API, Stripe secret key. And that Stripe secret key, it's going to be these test API token, like that. Nice. Which means that we can now access this to use Stripe, like that. Let's go to the function. Let's go to the code here. We want to update this to start initialize the Stripe SDK. And for now, just for now, let's just list the customers. You know what? Let's ask AI to do this. Can we do this? I'm curious. How good is Supabase's AI for code-related things? I want to use the Stripe SDK in a Supabase Edge function to read all the customers' profiles. That's it. All right, so it's giving us some code. This create client, and that's a bit weird. Oh yeah, right. For getting the client, that's good. So we can get the client from Supabase. Nice. We're gonna need that, by the way, because we want to read what user is actually consuming these edge function, and we can initialize the Stripe version. Nice. We can get this. All right, cool. We can use most of this. I like it. Nice. Thank you, Stripe. All right. So first of all, let's grab the Stripe import from here, and this is coming from npm like that. And then we want to initialize the Stripe SDK. So let's do this in here, for example. And in this Stripe SDK, we want to use the latest API version, which in this case, which one is the latest? This is absolutely not the latest. npm Stripe. The latest one is yeah, we actually don't need to specify the API version. I think that if we don't specify it, am I crazy or did this just change? Yeah, it did. All right. If we don't specify the API version, I think that it uses the latest one. Okay, let's try this, and then Stripe. Let's try to list all the customers. Let's see if this works. So we're gonna fetch all the customers from here. We don't need this data for now. And let's just return the customer's data. And I think that the customer's data is just customers.data. Well, let's return the customers. All right. Let's try this. If we get any errors, then we will try to solve this. We'll be debugging things on the go. Okay. Is it deployed? Let's see. All right, nice. That's good. We're getting obviously an empty object. That is good. That is completely fine. If I go in my sandbox in Stripe and I manually create a customer, let's create just a test customer. Test.test.com. And this is fine. This is fine. Let's add the customer. Now that I have this, and if I call this again, we should see this customer here. Nice. So this means that we have successfully connected Stripe. We can start using Stripe here. That is good. Now, I don't want to lose the customers. I don't care about this. I do care about checking if the user has a customer profile in Stripe. Because if it doesn't have a customer profile in Stripe, then we want to create the customer profile. If it does have a customer profile in Stripe, then we want to simply proceed with the logic. So here, check if the user has a customer profile in Stripe. What we want to do is Stripe customers list, but not only list, we want to check if the specific user has it. So how do we do this? In Stripe, when we create the users, we're going to be using some metadata in the user profiles, and we're going to be calling this, let's say Supabase ID, something like that. And in here, we're going to have the ID of the user stored. So if we go to our authentication table and I select, for example, my user, you can see that my user has this user ID like that. So we can call maybe better Supabase user UID, like that. And in that case, this would be me, right? This would represent my account. So let's actually update this to make it the same thing. So it would be Alex Iglesias at finsuite.com. It would be my name, Alex Iglesias. And yeah, we don't need anything else from now, right? So because now here in Stripe, there is an existing customer profile with my email and with my user ID. That is good. That is awesome, right? But we need to check for that. So let's go to the add function. I don't know if we may have lost the progress here. Yeah, we did lose the progress. Supabase is um, formatting the code, I think, that every single time, but it's fine here. So instead of listing the customers, Stripe API, we want to find the customers by a specific ID. So if we go to customers here, we can retrieve a customer here. And the way that we retrieve the customer using the Node.js API, it's by doing await stripe.customers.retrieve dot the customer ID here. Yeah. All right. Because there's one extra thing that I missed to explain, and it's that in Stripe, we're going to have the Supabase user ID, but as well in Supabase, let's go to authentication. In Supabase, here in the users, we're also going to be storing the customer ID from Stripe. So in both places, we know that, all right, this customer profile is connected to this Supabase ID, and this user profile is connected to this customer Stripe ID. All right. So from both places, we have a way to connect them. So here in the JSON from the user, here, I think that we're going to do that in the app metadata here. In here, we are going to store the customer from Stripe, the customer ID from Stripe. So this way, when we retrieve the user, and the way that we retrieve the user, let's actually do that. Let's get edge functions here, code. So here, we already got the hint here. We can create the Supabase client. And when, whoops, we actually need this as well. Like that. When we do this, we can also identify the user that it's calling the edge function, right? How do I identify the user that is calling an edge function? I think that there's a method in the Supabase client that it's here. So Supabase client auth get user, and we get the token. Because when we are calling this edge function, Supabase is already sending the access token from the user as well. So Kumar, can email be used as common ID between Supabase and Stripe? It could, but the problem of relying on emails is that the user might change the email, right? Or a user might sign up to your account using an email, but they don't verify the email as well. So then you've got somebody who signed up with an email that maybe it's not trusted because maybe they did not verify the email. So there's a bunch of things that don't make email as the main source of truth reliable. You probably want to have like IDs because you have a solid connection between both records of Supabase and Stripe. And then the email is just an additional info that you can retrieve. But you always know the ID, no matter if the email changes, the ID will not change. That's important. All right. So let's do this here. We want to extract the auth header. And I like actually that Come on, Supabase, what you're doing? Why are you doing this? Please store things. Don't don't remove things. Um, so we want to let's do a try catch. That's good. I like that it's doing a try catch because if something fails, we can always return an error. Let's do that. And I'm gonna copy whatever Supabase does. That's absolutely fine. But we need to include the course headers as well. That's absolutely fine. Cool. Okay, so we've got this. But inside this try catch, actually, let's do everything. Even creating Stripe, that's absolutely fine. Inside this try catch, we want to the method options. That's absolutely fine. Let's put that up here. We want to retrieve the token. So let's do that. Boom. This. If there is no authorization header, we want to throw an error because we're expecting an access token in this edge function. That access token will allow us to identify the user. If there is no access token, we return an error response saying that the authorization token is missing. Nice. We're also always going to be including the course headers in here, like that. And we get the token, and then with the token, we attempt to get the user from here. So let's do this. We retrieve we retrieve the user information using the token, using the Supabase Supabase client.auth.getUser token. If there is an error, we are returning again an error saying, hey, all right, we tried to get the user profile, but something went wrong. So you cannot proceed. And again, we want to include the course headers in here, like that. But this means that now here we got the user. So let's, for now, just return the user to make sure that this is working fine, that we can identify the user in the edge function. Like that. All right, cool. Every time that I deploy, Supabase just removes all the line breaks. So you guys will have to see me code without proper line spaces. I think that it should be fine. Okay, let's see. Am I getting... All right, cool. So as you can see here, now when calling this edge function, Supabase, we are sending the access token to Supabase that it's handled automatically by Wized. And in the edge function, we are getting the token, this access token, and we are able to identify the user who is making this call. And because now we can identify the user, we can use this user info to check, finally, check if the user has a Stripe customer profile, right? So the way that we're going to do it is by checking the app metadata of the user. I think that we can do it with the app metadata. I think. I actually don't know if we should be doing app metadata or user metadata. Because in user metadata, I think that users have enough permissions to update it themselves. But app metadata, we only can update it ourselves. So let me check one thing. Stripe, not Stripe, sorry, Supabase update user app metadata. Update a user, but that's with the JavaScript. But I don't want to do it. Supabase auth admin. Oh, nice. Okay. Can we update attributes, details? Yeah, we can update app metadata. Nice. That is good. A custom data object to store user application specific metadata. These maps to the auth users app metadata column. And then we also potentially can do the role thing later. That is good. All right, great. Perfect. That means that we're going to need the Supabase auth SDK, which I don't know if it's the same one as this one. Is this Supabase client, Supabase URL, and Supabase anon key? No, we're gonna need another client for the admin things, but it's absolutely fine. All right, so let's go ahead and check again. Supabase is removing lines all the time. Check if the user has a Stripe customer profile existing, right? So we want to find the customer. Let's uncode and remove this. This is going to be a customer, and this is going to be a wait Stripe customers retrieve, I think, right? Let's go back to the documentation. Retrieve and the customer ID. So we can do, for example, first of all, has a customer profile, and it can start being false. And first of all, we can see actually has customer profile. Let's make it so the user dot add metadata dot Stripe customer ID, like that. Could be this way, or we can simply check for this. Yeah, let's check for this for now. Right? So only if we detect that inside the user app metadata, there's a property that we have called Stripe customer ID, then we go ahead and try to retrieve this from Stripe, like that. 1 second. Yeah, because it's app metadata that it's directly in the main level, like that, right? And then here, if there is no customer, actually we will put the customer here, and then if there is no customer here, we will have to first create the customer, right? So then any steps that we take after this, we know that here there's always going to be a customer defined, either because we found it initially or because we created it, any of those things. All right. Now, the problem is that we cannot test this. And actually, I think that when trying to retrieve this, is Stripe going to fail? It could be. Let me try something, because I think that, can we save this without losing the progress? I don't know if we're going to be losing this. So just in case, let me copy it. I'm going to copy and put it somewhere. Like that. Cool. Okay, let's go back to authentication. Let's open my profile here. I am not sure if we can, from here, update the user. No, there's not a way to update things. That's a pity, because we would be able to simply make an update here to quickly test for this. But there is no way to do this, which means that we have to finish all the code without testing it, and then we're going to go ahead and test it. All right. No worries. Let's go back here. Actually, I think that I'm going to continue coding here in VS Code just because it's more convenient. All right. So here we've got the user. If there's an error, we're returning an error. Then here we are checking if there is a Stripe customer ID field in the user app metadata. We attempt to retrieve the customer like that. But if there's no customer, we want to create the customer here. Now, to create the customer, we need to do two things. We need to create the customer in Stripe, obviously, create the customer in Stripe, and then update the user's app metadata in Supabase to store the Stripe customer ID, like that. Nice. So first of all, to create the customer in Stripe, well, I'm actually getting some suggestions from Copilot. Thank you, Copilot. Pam. This first line is gonna work. So I like this. I like this first line. This first line where we are doing this. We are creating a customer using the email, and then we are passing some metadata to Stripe, not with Supabase ID. Actually, I called this. How did I call it? Supabase user UID. So let's do this. Supabase user UID. And it's using the user ID. Nice. This is fine, but I think that this is not going to work because this Supabase client that we have created in here, this Supabase client, it's using the Supabase anon key. And the anon key, it's not an admin key. We need to do an admin key. But let me double confirm. Let's go back to the AI assistant. How do I update the user app metadata from an edge function? Because I believe that the client needs to have a private, the secret, yeah, here, the service role key, like that. So essentially, we will have two different clients here. We will have the main Supabase client, and actually, let's call this not Supabase client, but let's call this Supabase anon client. And we're going to have another client called Supabase admin client. And in here, instead of using the anon key, we're going to use the service role key, which is it has admin permissions. And when it says it, Supabase client auth update user, we pass the token and we do add metadata. Is that it? We need to pass the token? Or is this hallucinating? Auth admin. Create client service role key. Access auth admin API. No, it's supabase.auth.admin. Okay. The AI from Supabase is already hallucinating, and I don't like it. So let's follow the documentation. The documentation is saying that we create the client with a Supabase URL with a service role key and some auth in here. Yeah. And in here, Supabase auth admin, and then we can update the user like that. So let's grab this. Let's put it down here. Let's remove this and let's use this. So here we're saying Supabase, that's not Supabase, it's going to be Supabase admin client. Supabase admin client, thank you. Dot Supabase admin client dot auth dot admin dot update user by ID. And in this ID, we need to find the user ID, which in this case, we already found the user. It's this one. So this is going to be user ID. And in the app metadata, we will pass the Stripe customer ID, which in this case is going to be the new customer ID that we created in here, like that. Now the user, let's use let. Or not, let's, now, data. And here, the user, let's make it let, so we can simply update this. So let's say user equals to data. Data.user, like that. All right. I think that we've done everything, but I'm gonna review just in case. We are processing the request, we're checking for cores, we are initializing the clients, and then we are getting the auth header, we are identifying the user who's calling the edge function, and we are checking if there is a customer Stripe profile attached to the user. If there's a customer profile attached to the user, we don't need to do anything here. But if there's no customer, then we need to go ahead and make sure that the customer exists. So we create the customer, we bind the Supabase user ID to the metadata of the customer, and then we go back to Supabase and we update the user with the Stripe customer ID here. And that's it, like that. So if we did it right, which I don't know why, but I think that something is going to fail. So stay with me. But if we did it right, um, when we call this, it should update my user profile because I'm logged in with my user to have a connected customer profile ID. So the first thing that I need to do is obviously remove this customer that I created because I want the edge function to be the one who creates it. Deleting the customer. Let's go and deploy this. So edge functions, there's one, code. Let's paste my code here. Like that. Actually, we need to handle if there's an error. If there's an error, we should do something about it. But that's totally fine. All right, let's try to deploy this. Is it going to break? Is it going to work? I would be amazed if it worked on the first try. Actually, it worked. Cool. Okay. So app metadata. And as you can see here, I've got a Stripe customer ID that it's binded to me, right? If I refresh this, I should see now a customer that has been created, right? Yes, nice, like that. And as you can see here in the metadata, there's the Supabase user ID, lovely. And if we go to our authentication, we should also see how, let's refresh this here. In the app metadata, there's the Stripe customer ID that contains the ID of the user, this ID here, right? Nice. So now every time that we are trying to open a checkout, things are being connected. We've got a customer for sure in Stripe that is connected to our Supabase user. Now, we need to finalize this with a couple things. First of all, if there's an error, let's throw. If there's an error, let's return a response. And I'm just gonna let Copilot do it. Thank you, Copilot. If there's no error, then we want to open. Actually, no, hold on. If there's no customer, we do this. Oh yeah, but if we got it up until this point, that means that this worked, because otherwise it would have failed. All right, so now we want to open Stripe checkout session. And I'm going to just use the suggestion from Copilot because essentially with the Stripe API, let's check this. We can open a checkout, the checkout session object. And when opening a checkout, essentially what it does, it generates a URL. So then we can send the user to that URL so they can purchase for something, right? Checkout session here, like that. When we open a checkout session, as mentioned, it includes a bunch of things, but it also includes, where is it? Where is it? The URL, this. this URL. And this URL is specifically where we want to send the user to make the purchase. So to create a checkout session, we do this. Await stripe.checkout.sessions.create. We pass a success URL in case that we want to send the user to another place after they have successfully purchased. And then we need to pass the items that we want to include in that checkout, because maybe we want the user to only select one item, or maybe we want the user to be able to select a bunch of items. So in this case, first of all, what we need to do, and I'm aware that we are almost running out of time, but I promise I'm just going to sprint through this. It's going to take like 5 to 10 minutes, and we're going to be done for the day. First of all, we want to, in the product catalog, we want to create the subscription that we want to offer to the users. So in this case, let's create a product, and this product will be premium membership. It could have an image. It's absolutely fine. I'm not going to put an image now. Let's make it recurring, although it could be a one-time payment as well. That's absolutely fine. But let's make it recurring, and let's make it, I don't know, like $100 a month. We want to be rich. Like that. Perfect. Right. So in this case, we've got one product, and in products in Stripe, you actually can have multiple prices, because maybe also instead of being 100 per month, maybe you also want to do 1,000 per year. So that's another price offering that you could do if you wanted to. So the user can select either yearly or monthly, etc. But for now, let's just keep it simple. Let's just have one price, which is $100 per month. This price has an ID. I can copy this price ID because this price is the one that we want to offer. So if I copy this price ID and we go here, we're saying, hey, all right, create a checkout session. Let's get rid of things that we don't need. Let's keep things very simple. The mode, is it going to be subscription or payment? It's payment except one-time payments. Use Stripe billing to set fixed price subscriptions. Yes, let's do subscription mode. Nice. And in the line items here, we want to use the ID of the Stripe price that we created. So this price, right? This is called a price for premium memberships. This is the ID, like that. We own one quantity of one, obviously, and then the success URL. Let's make it our live site, which is this. So let's make this like this. So if let's maybe check out success and check out cancel. That's absolutely fine, like that. So if the user successfully pays, we can send them to these checkout success. If the user cancels, we can do this. Or we can simply just send them to the homepage. That's absolutely fine as well. So let's do this. And then in the session, let's just return the session in the response of the API, like that. So let's go back to Supabase. Let's deploy this ads function. And I believe that this is not going to work because there's one thing that it's missing. But let's deploy this code for a second. Session. Boom. Yes, deploy the updates. I believe this is not going to work because the first time that you want to use Stripe Checkout, you have to set up some settings in Stripe to define some defaults. But I might be wrong. Let's call this. Oh, all right. It's actually working fine. So as you can see, we are receiving all this data from Stripe. The data that we are actually interested in is this URL. And now if I go and visit this URL here, whoops. Come on. Sorry, my bad. I want to visit, but without the quotes. If we visit this URL, look at this. we're getting this checkout session in Stripe where I'm being prompted, all right, subscribe to premium membership. Nice. And then I can, it knows that it's me because we have opened that Stripe session for that specific user. And then here, if for some reason Stripe had some info about me, they would also allow me to pay with link because they would know, all right, this user has been using Stripe in the past. There's some credit cards that are set up for him, blah, blah, blah. That is awesome. um, yeah, so essentially this, like that. We could even save the information if you wanted to, etc. And then I could pay, which would bring us to the next step, which is, all right, once we have paid, we need to listen for the webhooks that Stripe will send to us saying, hey, this user has paid. Now we need to update the database to reflect it. But that is happening in the next live stream. I'm going to do a cliffhanger here and leave you guys waiting because I think that we've done pretty decent advancements today with all of this. Do you guys have any questions? Because I know that this is a bit trickier and we've been doing a bit of, Cody session. But if you have any questions, drop them now. I can try to answer them or leave them in the comments and I will address them in the next live stream. Up to you guys. All right. Maybe you can always also try to do this yourself and send me some feedback. And before the next live stream, I can see the feedback and try to answer your questions. But if not, today we are ending the session here. Next session, we're going to handle the webhooks so we can update the user role in the database. And then we can also update our Wized application to implement all of this, to start a checkout session, to have some premium gated categories, and to handle the access to everything. I think that's it. We're almost done. Nice. Okay. Thank you guys. See you next Friday.